Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today's Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. The Supreme Court heard arguments regarding Donald Trump's Birthright Citizenship executive order. Looks like the Donald who was sitting in the court, he's going to lose. We're going to hear from people who were against that executive order, was speaking outside the Supreme Court. Plus, Elie Mystal, the nation's justice correspondent, will break it all down for us. Virginia's Attorney General Jay Jones will discuss Donald Trump's illegal executive order on voting. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey has signed a new bill requiring insurance companies to cover prostate cancer screenings at no cost. It is named after Black journalist Roy Johnson, my good friend. He will talk to us in the second hour about the bill named in his honor. We'll also show you how Georgia State Representative Tanya Miller gave a scholastic breakdown of America's real history to her white colleagues who support Confederate monuments. Lots to break down. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, the United States Supreme Court heard arguments today on the executive order of the twice-impeached criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald Trump regarding ending automatic birthright citizenship, which is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. It's been a year since he signed the order, and he continues to say that the right was originally intended for the babies of enslaved people of African descent after the Civil War and should no longer apply. A ruling for Trump will upend a long-standing tenet of constitutional law and have significant implications for United States citizens. Before the hearing, Bishop William Barber was with hundreds of others protesting outside the Supreme Court, and this is what he had to say.
We are here because the scripture says in Isaiah chapter 10, woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights and make women and children pray. Matthew chapter 18 says that Jesus said, woe unto those who offend the children, and it would be better to tie a millstone around their neck and be thrown into the sea than to offend the children. Y'all look up here, don't worry about that. Say, leave the children alone. Some folk don't know their history. The 14th Amendment was the rebirthing of America. That's why we had a Reconstruction. And that's why this Reconstruction Amendment guaranteed birthright citizenship to anyone born in this nation. My dear sister, now somebody, she can talk, but she can't be this close and disrupt what's going on in here. Now you can talk, that's all right. But I respect that you're right, and I haven't interrupted you, so don't interrupt me. I need security to move her back. Not up front, move her back. She can talk, but you got to move back. You got to move back. We here for serious business. You want to talk and debate, that's one thing, but not shout over somebody. Security, please move her back. We are here because of the attempts to undermine and remove birthright citizenship. And just say children born here don't have that fundamental right is another form of Trump's warped, wannabe God complex. Like the emperors of another era, he rejects the inalienable rights of all people and believes he gets to determine who dies in war, who's a citizen of the United States, who benefits from the laws of this country. But how many of you will shout, we will never abandon the children? Say it with me, we will never abandon the children. We will never abandon the children. Shout it loud, we will never abandon the children. If the Supreme Court chooses to overturn birthright citizenship after 158 years, then we would have to climb on top of that building and erase those words, equal protection under the law. We might as well replace it with gold letters that says Trump Court, not Supreme Court, Emperor's Court, King's Court. But today we come to say it's our court, it's the people's court. And that is why clergy like myself must call it what it is. To end birthright citizenship, you can worship Trump if you want to, but I know God, and God is against ending birthright citizenship and hurting the children. No sin is more serious than to hurt the children. No sin is more serious than to hurt the children. Just like the masked men who want to stop and check the papers of dark-skinned people who speak Spanish, Trump thinks that he can decide who does and who deserves the basic rights that God gives freely to us all. Trump's legal team is trying to use Confederate arguments to try to push the end to birthright citizenship. In 2023, we welcome 3.6 million children to this country. Tens of thousands of them got birthright citizenship, which meant from the day they were born, they had equal protection under the law and a right to pursue happiness. Somebody shout, leave the children alone. Leave the children alone. Let them have love. Let them have justice. Let them have humanity. The 14th Amendment protects babies from a caste system and makes sure that we don't have a permanent underclass. The fact of the matter is, those who are trying to end the Birthright Amendment, they weren't even the first people in the country. Their names don't sound Apache. Their names, Trump and Miller, don't sound Cherokee. They don't sound like the people who work the soil of this land, who spill blood to expand this democracy. Those were black people and Latino people and Native Americans. So if you want to talk about first, let's go to the first people that were here. The 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, was written in birthright citizenship so that evil could not be perpetrated against the children. They didn't allow evil in 1868, and we're not going to allow evil in 2026. We will not allow our babies to be pressed into a permanent underclass. That is inhumane, that is wrong, that is unjust. And that's why some folk have to scream, because when you got a lie, you got to scream. But when you got the truth, all you got to do is say amen. Say amen. Let the children live. Say amen. Let the children rise. Say amen. Let the children have their rights. Say amen. Let the children have their citizenship. Say an amen. And to all of those that thought they could divide black versus brown and brown versus Asian, well, you got another thought coming. You have not divided us, you have united us. Grab your brother or your sister by the hand and say, we are together now and forever. And we will never, never, ever allow the rights of our children to be taken away. And so we come today and to pray. Would you bow with me? Gracious and loving God, we lift up our nation and its leaders as they deliberate on the future of birthright citizenship. We ask for your divine wisdom to guide their hearts, that they may see every child as a bearer of your image and a person of inherent dignity. Lord, we pray for the babies whose future are being waived, and we ask that you protect them from the shadow of stateliness and provide them with a place where they are seen, valued, and welcome. God, give our lawmakers the courage to protect the unity of families and the foresight to build a society rooted in fairness rather than division. For if any nation declares that it wants to be first, it must start with how we treat the children. Help us to remember that we are all sojourners and that we are our true greatest measurement is how we treat the least of these. May the spirit of mercy and the spirit of love replace fear, and may our laws respect your heart for justice and peace. In your name that we call by many names, we declare amen. Now would you shout as loud as you can, we will protect the children. You can't scream us away. You can't run us away. You can't sue us away. You can't push us away. We will. We will. We will. We will. We will protect the children. Birthright. Citizenship. Always. Birthright. Citizenship. Always. Birthright. 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 Citizenship. Always.
All right, here's some of those oral arguments today.
I'm just working within your argument for a moment. Today, you can point to laws against immigration that are much more restrictive than they were in 1860. We really didn't have laws like that we do today until maybe 1880. So if somebody showed up here in 1868 and established domicile, that was perfectly fine without respect to anything, any immigration laws. There they were. And so why wouldn't we, even if we were to apply your own test, come to the conclusion that the fact that someone might be illegal is immaterial?
I would first cite Wong Kim Ark on that point, because Wong Kim Ark says you're...
Well, I'm not sure how much you want to rely on Wong Kim Ark.
But there is a statement in there that says, so long as they are permitted to be here. So Wong Kim Ark, keep in mind that by the time they decide Wong Kim Ark in 1898...
but that's 1898. Now I'm looking at 1868, you're telling me is when I should look, and the test for domicile. And the stuff you have about unlawfully present is like Roman law sources you're going to.
First and second restatements as well.
Can I ask you a question? To follow up on what Justice Gorsuch was exploring with you with respect to domicile, Did I understand you to say that domicile is going to be eventually or is controlled by Congress? Who is domiciled? I'm struggling to figure out who is domiciled in your argument.
The domiciliaries are people who are lawfully present and have an intent to remain permanently. So that's a kind of black letter, understanding of domicile. Now, Congress can dictate that certain classes of people, legal entrants and so forth, cannot lawfully lack the legal capacity to form a legally binding domicile.
But if that's so, then doesn't it make the domicile for the purpose of the 14th Amendment turn then ultimately on Congress's will in a way that the framers did not intend? I mean, my understanding was the framers put this citizenship clause into the Constitution to prevent future Congresses from being able to affect citizenship in this way.
Sure. Very briefly, no, I don't think so, because it is up to the alien whether or not they want to be domiciled here. Now, there may be collateral
But I thought you just said Congress can make determinations as to who counts as being domiciled here.
Yeah,
so if that's true, then it ultimately would impact, in your theory, whether or not this person can claim that they have citizenship for 14th Amendment purposes based on Congress's determination. And I just thought that's what the 14th Amendment was trying to get away from.
So that's the principle. That principle clearly applies here. I also respectfully disagree.
Yeah, and I guess, Mr. General Sauer, where does this principle come from? Allegiance, domicile. Allegiance, I think you point to a Lincoln funeral speech as your primary example of where this principle comes from. It's certainly not what we think of when we think of the word jurisdiction, and I appreciate that jurisdiction has many meanings, but the first meaning is like if you're subject to jurisdiction, you're subject to the authority of. One doesn't say, oh, what that means is a certain kind of allegiance that domiciliaries have and nobody else does. So the text of the clause, I think, does not support you. I think you're sort of looking for some more technical, esoteric meaning. And then the question comes, okay, if the text doesn't support you, if there's a real history of people using it that way, but as far as I can tell, at the time of the 14th, you're using some pretty obscure sources to get to this concept.
Like 500 birth tourism companies in the People's Republic of China whose business is to bring people here to give birth and return to that nation.
Having said all that, you do agree that that has no impact on the legal analysis before us?
I think it's, I'd quote what Justice Scalia said in his Hamdan dissent, where their interpretation has these implications that could not possibly have been approved by the 19th century framers of this amendment. I think that shows that they've made a mess, their interpretation has made a mess of the provision.
Well, it certainly wasn't a problem in the 19th century.
No, but of course, we're in a new world now, as Justice Alito pointed out, where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
It is.
One thing that's puzzling me about your argument when I think about the ratification of the 14th Amendment, in many ways it would have made sense for them, and you acknowledge the jus sanguinis in citing Vattel. It would have made sense in some ways for them to say, okay, we're going to follow, if they wanted to accomplish what you're saying they wanted to accomplish. You could say, well, we're going to follow jus sanguinis because we're going to make it all ride on parentage. But instead, I mean, the 14th Amendment, we're talking about subject to the jurisdiction thereof, but it also says born in the United States. So you have the jus soli kind of point there, but you're saying it narrowed that point by tying it to the citizenship of the parents, at least as to soil. But I take it you're not arguing that United States citizens who have children born abroad would qualify for birthright citizenship. So it's kind of a narrower view of both the traditional jus soli rule and a narrower view of the jus sanguinis rule. So why would they have done that? And if they were going to invent an entirely new kind of citizenship, like an American brand, why wouldn't we have seen more discussion of that in the debates?
I think you do.
Y'all, it really was pretty wild. Elie Mystal joins us right now. He's the justice correspondent for The Nation. All right, Elie, breakdown. What the hell happened today? Seems like even the far-right MAGA Supreme Court justices are like, are y'all stupid?
Yeah, what happened today, Roland, is that Trump lost. I can't know for sure until the opinion comes out, probably in late June. But from what I heard today, Trump lost, and Trump lost hard. You played, I think, two of the most important clips. One was from Chief Justice John Roberts. Part of Trump's argument, part of Sauer's argument is this idea that because of the world we're living in, where which is so very different from 1868 when the 14th Amendment was ratified, which is so very different from 1898, which is when the critical presidential case was decided called Won Kim Ark. Because we're in this whole different world, we have to have a different understanding and different rules about birthright citizenship. And you just played John Roberts saying, it may be a new world, but it's the same Constitution. That is mic drop from the Chief Justice. That is as close as he's going to get to telling you, get out my face with this, right? Like he that is him dismissing Sauer's argument on that point. Well, the second clip you played, or near the end, the last clip you played was Amy Coney Barrett. Now, I like to remind people here, gently so, that we also have to remember that Amy Coney Barrett has adopted children, and that coming to the mother of adopted children with an argument that says your citizenship is tied to the blood of your birth parents, not the soil that you're born onto or any other kind of legal distinction, that ain't going to hit too well with a person like Amy Coney Barrett. And I found her to be very strong today, criticizing the administration, kind of going after their core underlying argument. The clip that you played, she was throwing around a lot of Latin phrases, jus sanguinis versus jus soli. These are Latin phrases that go to the idea of how citizenship is based. Is it jus sanguinis means through the blood. So your citizenship comes from the blood of your parents and is passed on to you. Jus soli means from the soil. Does the citizenship come from the soil, the land that you're birthed on, right? In America, we've done it jus soli. We've done it based on the land you're birthed on. We've done that not just since the 14th Amendment. We've done that before the 14th Amendment when you looked at how citizenship was determined in each of the various states. And it's not just America. It is pretty much the entire new world. So Republicans, MAGA people, they like to say, oh, no, America's so very different. It's not how they do it in the old world. No, that's not how they do it in some European countries. But I think your listeners and viewers are particularly primed to understand that Europe ain't the whole damn world. And when you look at the hemisphere that America is in, what you see in the Western hemisphere is that most of the countries here, the US, Canada, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, I can go on and on and on, they do it jus soli. They do it based on the soil that you're born into, right? And Amy Coney Barrett was hitting exactly at that point that this is the way that we do it. And Sauer is giving them, and Trump is giving them no arguments and no reasons for them to completely throw out the Constitution, completely throw out the 14th Amendment, completely throw out literally 130 years of Supreme Court precedent just because Donald Trump is particularly bigoted and particularly hates undocumented immigrants. Like that core argument wasn't making sense to Barrett, to Roberts, and even a bit as you played to Neil Gorsuch, right? Now, you heard them in the Gorsuch clip talking a lot about this issue of domicile, right? This idea that to confer citizenship to your children, you have to be domiciled in the United States, right? Well, that is a term that John Sauer and the Trump administration, they're just making up. You can read the 14th Amendment, as I have. You can read the Civil Rights Act, as I have. And the word domiciled ain't there. What the amendment says is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And you played the clip of Kagan explaining very accurately that subject to the jurisdiction usually means subject to the authority of, right? So if I can be arrested by the United States, I am subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, right? If I can get a parking ticket from the United States, I am subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. We know that's not true for everybody that's here. ambassadors, I live in New York City, ambassadors I know don't get parking tickets. And it's really annoying. Ambassadors can argue that they're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. My black ass is, and so is any immigrant. So is any undocumented immigrant. They are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So this idea of like, oh, actually it depends on domiciliaries, that's some bullcrap that Sauer is making up. Now, he's not alone in making it up, because Sauer's fundamental argument is based on the arguments of a man named, a 19th century man named Alfred P. Morse. That's the source that Sauer and the Trump administration keep going back to try to make their "it's about domicile, it's not for transients" argument. Thing about Arthur P. Morse, he was an avowed white supremacist. And when I say avowed, I mean Arthur P. Morse is actually the lawyer that argued Plessy v. Ferguson for the side of the segregationists, right? So we're talking about like a famous white supremacist, right? There's like Nathan Bedford Forrest, John C. Calhoun, and like this guy, right? Like he's on that third tier of like famous white supremacists in history. And that's the guy that the Trump administration's entire legal argument is based on. And at the Supreme Court today, both Roberts called Sauer's sources quirky, which I believe is, I speak white for a living. I believe that's the white version of that sounds like some racist bullcrap to me, right? Roberts calling it quirky. Kagan called his sources unusual. He's using a white supremacist to make his argument, right? So yeah, I think Trump lost, and I think it's not going to be particularly close. I counted 6 votes against the Trump position, if you count all the liberals, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, along with Roberts, along with Amy Coney Barrett, and probably along with Gorsuch. I could argue that there's 7 votes. I could argue that Brett Kavanaugh was a little bit harder to pin down, but a lot of people are arguing that Brett Kavanaugh also wasn't buying it. And Roland, if you want me to go really crazy, want me to say something really radical, I think Clarence Thomas is still in play. I'm not saying we're going to get him. But Clarence Thomas, usually when he's against you, he makes it very clear in his like 1 or 2 questions that he's going to ask. And this hearing, he asked 3 questions, which is a lot for Clarence. And only one of them was obviously like, I'm with Trump, right? The other 2 were open-ended a little bit. You could kind of take them either way. So I don't necessarily, I'm not going to predict that Thomas is going to vote against the Trump administration. I'm not a fool. But even Thomas wasn't 100% bought in to this particular Trump argument.
And it was awesome that Donald Trump had to watch this ass-kicking live in person.
So let's remember, there has never been a sitting president to attend Supreme Court oral arguments. That has never happened in recorded history because it is gauche. It is classless. It is a violation of it's not a violation of separation of powers, but it's implication of separation of powers. You're not supposed to do it. Now, we know that Trump doesn't care about what he's supposed to do or what he's not supposed to do. That we understand. But you got to ask, why did he show up at all? And Roland, I've made the analogy. I think what Trump was trying to do was to intimidate his handpicked justices by simply being in the courtroom, right? It's a Tony Soprano kind of move. It is literally the move Michael Corleone pulls in The Godfather 3, right? Where the guy is testifying at the Senate hearing, then Michael shows up with the guy's brother. Michael doesn't say anything, just looks at his brother, and suddenly Frankie Pentageli is like, oh, I just made it all up about Mikey Corleone. Right? Like, that's I think what Trump was trying to do, was trying to sit there and intimidate the justices just by his presence, and it didn't work. They didn't care. I listened very closely for any hint, like literally, and there it is, that clip. I listened very closely for any hint that the justices were taking notice or asking different questions or asking their questions in a different way because Trump was in the room. And Roland, honestly, I didn't hear it. The only thing that I could argue is that Kavanaugh didn't ask any questions while Trump was there, I think. I don't know exactly when he left because I was listening to it. I couldn't watch it. But I'm not sure that Kavanaugh asked any questions while Trump was there. So maybe there was something. But like, there was no real indication that the justices were intimidated in any way. And then I saw on the television that Trump walked out about halfway through. Anyway, didn't even stay. He listened to Sauer and he walked out after that. So if he understood that he was losing, maybe that's why he left. He took the L. I think it's unlikely that Trump was capable of understanding a live Supreme Court oral argument as it was happening. I mean, he didn't have access to my feed, so how could he? No, I'm joking about that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that he was actually following along. I think he got bored. You got to figure, Roland, Trump hasn't been in a room where he is as irrelevant as he was in that room since, like, the last time he was in Melania's bedroom, right? Like, that's probably the last time that Trump was truly didn't need to be there. Nobody cared that he was there. Nobody paid any attention to him. Nobody asked him a question. And a man like Trump, he doesn't have the stamina to be unimportant for much longer than an hour. So he was unimportant for an hour and he left. Totally. I'm not saying it backfired, but it totally, if he was trying to intimidate them, that ship totally failed.
Well, I always love it when Donald Trump takes an L. Elie Mystal, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Roland. Have a nice one.
All right, folks, one of the critical issues that we're looking at is the issue of voting. It is dominant before us. We see what Donald Trump tried to do with that silly executive order on yesterday, which makes no sense whatsoever when it comes to mail-in voting. It is a constant battle that we're seeing. And so this is when you have, of course, Democrats who are elected, folks like Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones, they're fighting back against that. The Attorney General joins us right now. I'm glad to have you back here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. First and foremost, I got to get your take on, again, what happened today. I mean, to see, I mean, no one in their right mind would have thought that these folks would try to go after citizenship. But we see what they're trying to do. Project 2025, Attorney General Jones, was all about rewriting the rules, the laws, and they wanted to literally upend the 14th Amendment. So if they did that, it's no shock they would try to deny people the opportunity and the right to vote.
Well, you know, look, I did not watch or listen to today's oral arguments, but I certainly got a download. But I will tell you that I and so many of my fellow attorneys general from across the country understand that birthright citizenship is a foundational principle of our republic. It's something that has been embedded within our Constitution, a right that is afforded to so many people here in this country. To see the president and his administration try to undermine that is a disgrace. And it's why we have put our collective voices behind the position that he is wrong, that the administration is wrong. And, you know, look, I don't claim to be able to read the justices' minds, but I do think that there was a lot of skepticism today that was expressed toward the administration's position, and rightfully so. This president seems hell-bent on doing things that are illegal, on upending our institutions and our norms and our traditions and our customs, and this is no difference. And so I do think that cooler heads and reasonable heads will prevail in this moment. But, you know, I and my colleagues are really fighting to make sure we hold the line until we can get Congress back to be the real check on him that the Constitution has envisioned.
Well, specifically on the executive order yesterday, we come to mail-in voting. I mean, this idea of putting a barcode on the envelope of a individual barcode on every envelope, just crazy. Officials in Oregon and Arizona, of course, they rely heavily on mail-in voting in all their elections, already vowed to sue. And I certainly expect we're going to see more lawsuits coming from the states. And this is, again, the overreach of Donald Trump trying to tell states how to operate voting when that's always been left up to states and not the federal government.
He needs to understand that states are tired of the overreach. They're tired of the power grabs. You know, we're sick and tired of this. If you look at what happened in Virginia in our elections last fall, we all campaigned on pushing back against the federal overreach, and we all had significant success. And we have sued this administration dozens of times since I took office in January, fulfilling those promises and continuing to push back against the craziness. Mail voting is safe and it's secure. Like you mentioned, a couple of states use it as their primary form of voting. We in Virginia had the Virginia Voting Rights Act, which substantially expanded our mail voting program, which is a good thing. Our elections are safe. They are secure. There is no instance of voter fraud here in Virginia. Anything that the administration says to say, hey, this is to push back on voter fraud is baseless. It is not grounded in fact. They are causing chaos. They are sowing fear. They are using misinformation to try to justify a mechanism to create a national role so that they can use it for nefarious purposes. And we are pushing back against that. I think all of the Democratic attorneys general are united in lockstep that we are going to sue because this executive order is clearly illegal. States have administered elections. We do it well. We know what we're doing. We trust our communities. We trust our localities. We trust the state to administer the elections. And that's what's going to continue to happen. The people who staff our polling places here in Virginia, our registrars, those are our community members, our friends, our family members, our neighbors. We trust them. We have no thought that they would be, doing something nefarious. We have no issues here in Virginia, and I think my colleagues would say the same thing. And so, we're all united in pushing back against this patently illegal power grab. This is yet again an instance where the president seems to think that the rules don't apply to him, and he can just rewrite things without Congress being a part of this conversation, without the states and the rights that have been delegated to us being a part of this conversation. And I feel very confident that we're going to be successful in pushing back on this, getting this thing thrown out, and so that people can go vote this year in their respective states without any fear, without any concern, and without any confusion.
Also, I find it quite hilarious to see Republicans who were on the exact same ballot, who won their races, riding with Donald Trump, yelling fraud. I'm going, but you were on the same ballot. So all of the people who were on the same ballot who won or lost aren't yelling fraud except one person who lost in 2020.
Look, this seems to be something that he seems hell-bent on. And frankly, I can't tell Republicans what to campaign on or what not to campaign on, but I will tell you that in Virginia, Donald Trump's brand is toxic. People here have rejected him 3 times. Every single time that he's been on the ballot here in Virginia, he has lost by increasing margins each year. And then we built upon that last year in the fall where, Abigail Spanberger won by 15 points. Ghazala Hashmi won by a little under 10. I won by 7, and we picked up 13 seats in the House of Delegates. And so it is very clear that at least here in Virginia, his brand is toxic. And if Republicans want to attach themselves to the president, be my guest. His approval rating continues to drop, not just in Virginia, but across the country. And, I think people are smart enough to know that we respect the rule of law here in this country. We don't put any one person over others. We have a constitution that is applied evenly and fairly to every single person. There are no kings in this country. And we have a system of checks and balances that we're going to fight for. Look, our democracy has been, I'd say, fragile at points in our history. It's designed to bend. It has not broken, and it will not break in this instance because we have attorneys general, we have members of Congress, we have members of the state legislature, governors, senators who care deeply about the future of this country. And we're not going to let Donald Trump run over us. We're not going to let him run roughshod over us just to satisfy his personal whims. This is much bigger than that. And I look forward to continuing to be a check on him until we can get a House of Congress back at least in November and then get him out of office come January 2029.
My panel, I know they got some questions for you, but y'all got a huge special election coming up on April 21st with regard to redistricting and Republic. I also find it quite hilarious to watch a lot of Republicans in Virginia who have been slamming Democrats for trying to change the map when they were real quiet about Texas, about North Carolina, about Florida, about Missouri. They were cheering those places on. Seems like they ain't happy when the rabbit gets the gun.
Well, look, we have an election that is happening right now in Virginia to determine our future about our voice and our representation in Washington. I cannot tell people how to vote because my office is defending the right to vote. The election itself has been under attack by the RNC and other Republican actors. And I'm so proud of my team for stepping up and stepping in and swiftly making sure that this got to the Supreme Court of Virginia, who said the election will go forward. People in Virginia will be able to make their voices heard. I myself voted just a couple of days ago, but I'm proud of the fact that we in Virginia have safe and secure elections. We are going to step up and show the president, who, again, I think doesn't believe that the rules apply to him, that we have something different for him in store here in Virginia. And I'm really excited about the prospect of people being able to exercise their right at the ballot box, something that, you and I think have both agreed and said publicly for a long time is the most sacred right that we have as Americans. It's what sets us apart, not just from folks here, around the world, but really what makes us special, that we can go where an outcome is not predetermined, that people have a choice and have the freedom to go and do that. I'm the descendant of slaves, just like so many other folks who are watching this tonight. We have people who came before us who died so that we could go and vote. And every time that we do not exercise that right, we're cheapening their legacy. So I implore Virginians, if you have not yet gotten up, please go vote. Early voting started last month. It runs through the Saturday before the election, and Election Day is on April 21st. This is really, really important. So please get out, go vote, make your voices heard so that we can have the right voices representing us in Washington going forward.
Questions for Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones. First up will be Rebecca Carruthers, President and CEO of Fair Election Center.
Thanks for being on the show tonight. I have two quick questions. One question is about the Supreme Court, especially when the Solicitor General was really talking about this fictitious standard of domicile. And I'm just thinking about how this impact a lot of Black Americans, especially those of us who are descendants of slaves, because at the time, those who were enslaved weren't domiciled, meaning they weren't residents per se. They were property. So can you talk more about that? Because it seems as if this administration is playing around with the idea of citizenship, even for those of us who have been in this country for centuries.
Look, I don't think they're trying to hide the ball, but I do think that I read some of the transcript from today's oral arguments. It seems very clear that there are justices on both sides of the aisle who are quite skeptical of the position that the administration has taken. I think there's a reason why I and my other Democratic attorneys general have signed onto an amicus brief in opposition to the administration's position. This is a foundational principle for our country that would really, if changed, upend a lot of things and throw a lot of things into question. Again, it really does sort of make sense for the president because he seems hell-bent on creating as much chaos and confusion as possible. But from an administrative standpoint, this would really throw our democracy into turmoil. And it's yet another reason why we have to make sure that we check this president and all the actions that he's trying to take. We can see very clearly that most of them are done because they have ill intent. But frankly, this is one of those where it has united people on both sides of the aisle because of the wide-reaching implications. I think whether you're talking about Black Americans, you're talking about immigrants, you're talking about anybody, someone in your life is going to be impacted by this in a negative way. And this is one of those moments where I think you're seeing folks coalesce against the administration. To see him sitting in the front row to observe the shellacking that he took, I think really hopefully will send a message to this administration that they can push the envelope, but people are going to stand up and they're going to fight back. And we have these institutions that have been around for 250 years for a reason. And again, they're may bend in certain moments, but they're certainly not going to break. And right now, I think you're seeing many people steel their spines against this stuff. And I hope that this is a turning point as we move toward the midterms and then on into 2028, where we can get this guy out of office and get someone else in the White House who understands what democracy means, what our republic is built on, and where we all want to go as a nation.
Michael Brown, former chair, I'm sorry, Rebecca, you had another question?
Yeah, another quick question. There were rumors in the fall, this past fall, leading to your statewide elections, that there was going to be ICE deployed across Virginia. We do a lot of work on college campuses, and we heard those rumors. What is your plan for the fall if indeed the administration deploys ICE agents near or around polling locations in Virginia?
Well, as a threshold matter, people in Virginia don't feel safe and secure. And that's because the administration and the policies that they have been pushing have made us all feel that way. I work very closely with state and local law enforcement in my capacity as the 49th Attorney General of Virginia to make sure that students, citizens, all of our communities are as safe as humanly possible. Our governor has rescinded the executive order that was issued by her predecessor, pulling the 287G policies off the table from the state perspective. We, again, are all committed to making sure that our citizens are afforded all the protections that they are due under the law, that no one's civil rights or civil liberties are violated, and that due process is followed. We are law-abiding citizens here in Virginia, and my job is to make sure that people do that and have every opportunity to, again, exercise the rights that they're afforded under the law, under the Constitution of the United States, under the Constitution of Virginia. And so we're obviously keeping a close tabs on the administration's activities. We certainly get a lot of, incoming from citizens across the Commonwealth who are being vigilant, and we appreciate that. And so we will continue to engage with our communities, engage with law enforcement, and make sure that everybody is being protected.
Michael Brown, go.
General, how are you? Nice to see you again, sir.
Good to see you as well.
And proud of all the work you've been doing. This is more of a political question rather than legal. My grades in law school weren't good enough to ask you a legal question, so I'll ask you a political question. Obviously, we know that the Supreme Court is supposed to be apolitical. Clearly, members of the Supreme Court have their political slants and the like. With the intimidation move he attempted today, the intimidation goes in so many different ways. Yes, it's to stare at them to try to force your will on whatever decision or questions they would ask. But the other intimidation also comes from the allies and friends of justices when they're at receptions and cocktail parties and friends' houses for dinner, wherever they may see their friends. But they also have seen 30, what is he now, 33% in polls disapproval rating. And maybe when they see that, they also say, well, he can't intimidate me because I'm not getting as many calls about protecting him. Clearly, that's the cynic in me in this question. But what do you think about that?
You know, we see the policies that this administration has pushed, and we have seen the political fallout and the consequences for these policies, where they are clearly not listening to the people of Virginia and really this country. Every time Donald Trump has been on the ballot in Virginia, he has lost. He lost to Hillary Clinton in 2016. Joe Biden beat him by 10 points in 2020. Kamala Harris beat him in 2024. We made history last year electing our first female governor, our first Muslim statewide elected office holder with a lieutenant governor. And then I'm the first Black attorney general in Virginia. And I think that we all ran spectacular campaigns because we were focused on pushing back against the overreach of this administration. I think the policies have finally started to sink in, and they're really hurting people. You think about the tariffs that were declared illegal, outside of the fact that we sued to stop those tariffs. The Supreme Court threw them out. Those tariffs, that policy, has cost families on average about $1,700. That's real money for real people. We all want that money back in our pockets. I have 2 young children. I need that money for groceries, for diapers, for childcare. The list goes on. And I'm just like everybody else across this country. You think about now the impact on our economy, where gas prices continue to go up, costs continue to rise. This falls squarely at his feet. And so I think, again, as mentioned earlier, if folks want to tether themselves to this administration and those policies, I bid you good luck, because in every special election, in every general election since he took office again, it's been, I think, considerably unsuccessful for Republican candidates who are unwilling to move off of the policies of this administration. And frankly, if they continue to hew to those policies, that's going to continue to have success for Democrats. And I think, we were really in a great position to win the House of Representatives in the fall. I think now the Senate is very much in play, and the Democrats could get a majority in the United States Senate to really have a bedrock in Congress to check this president. I will tell you that we, attorneys general, are working really hard to be the last line of defense, and we are waiting for the cavalry to come in November with a big blue wave, because our offices are stretched thin. We are using every single resource at our disposal to push back on this chaos and on this craziness. And so I think the political fallout and the consequences have already been sort of laid bare to this president, and he doesn't care because he cares more about himself than about this country. But to the rest of his party, the warning signs are there. The red lights have been flashing. And if they're not looking at that or they're not listening to people, I suggest they get out and campaign where communities are being impacted by this deeply. And I've done it. I've seen it. I continue to do it. And that's why I think we're going to have a lot of success come November.
I do have actually we have a Teresa Lundy, principal founder of TML Communications. Teresa, what's your question?
Thanks, Roland. A.G. Jones, one, thank you for all that you are doing for Virginians, and hopefully other states are mirroring that same leadership. My question is, as we know, Trump is the author of Confusion and Chaos, but he's also a very great businessman. However, we think if it works, it doesn't work. We've seen him cut so many deals. The one issue that I was concerned about was this barcode, and is this barcode being contracted out to another firm or something like that? That's not something you probably would know, but I think it's something that we should have as a cause of concern of how taxpayer dollars are being used. So as you guys are still advocating for this effort and make sure that voter integrity is still there, I think that is something that we should possibly look at of the reason why. We know it's going to help in the midterms, but there's also always a dollar bill behind it somewhere.
Well, we know that the executive order was patently illegal, and that's why we all moved very quickly to declare it as such, and we'll work in the courts to make sure that they do as well. But what you have hit on, I think, is something that everybody needs to be very mindful of, is data privacy. And how the data that you are giving away to certain entities is being used. And the bigger fear, I think, when you think about a sort of national registry, as this president sort of envisions, which would be used, I believe, for nefarious purposes if enacted, but it will not get there, would really have some dire consequences for people across this country. State legislatures have been really active in trying to tighten data privacy laws. I'm proud of the fact that in Virginia, when I was a member of the legislature, we voted for the Virginia Data Privacy Act several years ago, which established guardrails about the usage of people's personal information. I think we should all have a healthy fear about how some of our personal information is being used. We see the consequences of data breaches. We see how we're being fed certain ads and certain content on these social media applications. You can go on. And so I think now, as we move into a place where this has entered the conversation as it relates to voting, that's why attorneys general are really important. That's why your secretaries of state, or in our case, Commonwealth, are really important as the defenders of the election protection space and keeping the integrity of our elections and our information sacred. And that's something that I think we as Democrats will always be committed to. But there are obviously plenty of other states that don't have folks like us who are leading the charge in that manner. And so we just really have to be mindful. And that's why having a Congress that has majorities of Democrats in both houses, maybe they can get something done that will really help protect everybody across the country in the absence of leadership in those respective states.
Real quick, I got to ask you this here. Go to my iPad. I don't know if you saw this. Mayor in Martinsville, Virginia, was suspended. He's claiming no due process. Has your office gotten involved in this at all?
We have not gotten involved. There are processes for folks to request our office to get involved, but at this moment, that has not happened. We hope that our localities can resolve their issues without my office's involvement. Obviously, we've got a lot on our plate as it relates to this president and trying to make sure that Virginia's rights and interests and values are defended. But I love my job. I love doing my job. And I love visiting the South Side. So I'm sure that we'll get out to Martinsville at some point real soon and hear all about it.
All right. Attorney General Jay Jones, we always appreciate you being on the show. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. See you soon.
I appreciate it. And again, folks, as I go back to my iPad, we're going to be following this up where this black mayor in Martinsville, Virginia, gets suspended. And he's like, what the hell? Why did I get suspended? So we'll be following that up with more as well. All right, y'all, got to go to break. We come back. Governor Kay Ivey signs a bill into law requiring insurance companies to pay for prostate cancer screenings. It was named after a black journalist who got diagnosed last year. He'll join us next. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget, support the work that we do. You want to join our Bring the Funk fan club? Your dollars make it possible to continue the work that we do. You want to give you a cash app? Use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. It's also for credit cards as well. Checks and money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003 7-0196. PayPal, R. Martin Unfiltered. Venmo, RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
Why does it feel like we're going backward? Voting rights under attack, schools stripped of funding, black history erased. This is the Trump MAGA agenda. They want to take us back. They are redrawing congressional lines in states across the country, deciding who gets power and who gets silenced. We see what this is, a power grab. Virginians won't be fooled. Show up, vote, take back our power. It's a temporary measure that gives the people, not politicians, the final say. Vote yes by April 21st.
Hey, I'm TD Jakes, and you are watching the Black Star Network.
Folks, July of last year, Roy Johnson, columnist with AL.com, announced that he had prostate cancer. And, of course, a lot of people were commenting, reaching out. And all of a sudden, the state representative said, you know what, I think we need to do something about this. Then takes this thing to the legislature. And a law is passed named after him that requires insurance companies to actually pay for it. How about that? Yesterday, there was ceremonial signing in with Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, of course, signing it into law. Of course, this is critically important, life-saving cancer screenings. Again, more accessible for men who are at risk. It's SB 19. Takes effect on October 1st, and as I said, it will require insurance companies to cover prostate cancer screenings at no cost. It ensures that men over 50 and high-risk men over the age of 40 can receive screenings without paying out of pocket. And so it was renamed to honor Huntsville businessman David McElhaney and Roy Johnson, who joins us right now. Roy, glad to have you here. You just turned 70 years old. I was there in Birmingham celebrating your birthday. And so must be pretty cool to turn 70, and here you got a bill named after you.
Yeah, Roland. I mean, it's been quite an amazing few weeks. And as we've discussed, it's really all God. Almost a year ago, as you mentioned, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And we talked about this. You know, I'm strong in my faith and was certainly confident that God would carry me through this. But little did I know that he would do something like this. You know, we talked about the scriptures, and of course, in 2 Chronicles 12:9, it says that his power is made perfect in our weakness. But sometimes we can't even imagine what his power may do. And so one of the things that I said I would do would talk about my journey, would share my journey, just in the hopes that more men would get tested, that they would be more frank about their condition. And prostate cancer is very treatable. It is very curable. It killed my father, but I was very confident early on that it's not going to kill me. Fortunately, I did detect it early. I've been getting tested annually for years. And so I'm doing well now. I'm thriving with cancer. And one of the things I wrote was encouraging our state lawmakers, our legislators, to pass this bill. It did not pass last year. It died at the end of the session, maybe in part because of the tenor of the federal government that was really anti-everything as this new administration was coming in. But I said, look, this is not about Republican. It's not about Democrat. It is not about rich or poor. It is not about rural or urban. Prostate cancer affects everyone. And I give credit to Senator Steve Livingston, who is a Republican, and Representative Jeremy Gray, a Democrat, who came together, crafted this bill, and had it pass both houses. And as you mentioned, was recently signed by Governor Ivey.
You know, when we talk about this issue of prostate cancer, look, Dexter King, Dr. King, Coretta Scott King's son, died of prostate cancer. Montel Jordan has been on this show talking about it. So, I mean, and there's so many of the cases, and just like many things, it's curable, but unfortunately, when it comes to men, especially black men, folk who don't get tested, they find out late. This is important because, again, it mandates that the insurance companies cover the cost.
As I began to research prostate cancer, learned early on, 1 in 8 men overall will get prostate cancer. Every time I'm in a room with men, and if it's more than 8 of them, I say, look around, one of you will be diagnosed with prostate cancer. If it's black men, it is 1 in 6. And we are 3 times more likely to die from it than white men. Why? Because we have a tendency not to go to the doctor, not to get tested. As many men know, for years it was a digital test, and we were all very embarrassed to get that. Now it is a PSA test. It is a blood test. It is a prostate-specific antigen test that is a finger prick. They take your blood, they test your blood, and they measure the amount of this hormone that's in your blood. So it is a much easier test. Everyone should get it. The earlier they detect it, the better your chances of survival. And so that is my calling, is just to encourage every man within the sound of my voice, black or white, rich or poor, no matter where they live, go get tested because it just might save your life.
You talk about being in different rooms, and since you went public, you wrote about it, you posted videos. Have you, I take it you've been hearing from other men sharing their own testimonies?
I can't count the number of men who have shared their testimonies with me and who still do. It's interesting. As you know, I write an opinion column for AL.com, and my opinions are often very controversial. And I have men who have written and said, I don't agree with anything you say, but I'm praying for you. And they share their prostate cancer journey. They tell me that they were diagnosed 12 years ago and they're still around. They tell me to continue fighting. So this is a unifying effort. This is something that brings a lot of people together. Almost everyone watching today has someone in their family who has either been diagnosed or is getting tested for it. And so, yes, men every day remind me not just of their journey, but now I'm getting young men who are telling me, you know what, Brother Roy, I got tested because of you. I just turned 40 and it hadn't crossed my mind, but because I turned 40 and I'm an African-American man, I'm going to start getting tested. It's particularly humbling when young men with young children come up to me at church and have shared that with me over the last few weeks.
Questions for our panel. Michael Brown, you first.
Roy, how are you, my friend? Good seeing you again.
Thank you, Michael.
Did you whoop up on Roland on the golf course in Alabama?
Hell no.
Let's get to the real serious part of the conversation.
Now, Michael, you know I hand out ass whippings, whether in D.C. or Alabama.
And he shows no sympathy no matter what your condition is. So this time we did not play, but I'm sure we will sometime soon.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Hey, Roy, when you were traveling around and having your conversations with our brethren, did you find out whether they were resistant because of the old traditional issues related to macho and don't worry, I'll drink some water, go to sleep, and everything will be okay? Or was it lack of health care that keeps folks from going to get tested?
It really ran the spectrum, Michael. I had a number of men who said that initially, absolutely, they were concerned about one of the treatments, which of course involves a prostatectomy, and they were concerned about what their sex life would be afterward. But one of my responses to them is that I gave away the guarantee that have life is to be dead. So,
hold on, Roy. Hey, Roy, hold on. You broke up there. You said your response to them was
for men who are concerned about their sex life post surgery. I said, I'll guarantee you could have a bad sex life if you're dead. Right. So get the test, get whatever treatment your doctors recommend, because whatever's on the other side is much better than losing your life, than your loved ones losing you being around, you losing your ability to support your family. So absolutely, Michael, there were people who were initially concerned about what their sex life would be like after surgery or even after chemotherapy. But as I assure them, it's better to endure that. And there are plenty of ways now. Look, there's pills for that, Roland. We know that, right? There's pills to be able to help you in that regard. So it's better to get checked, find out what's wrong, and get treatment for it than to be concerned about your sex life afterwards.
Absolutely. Or our Dr. Rachel, our sexologist we had on the show, she would say, don't take pills. She says there are natural ways. Y'all go pull that conversation with Dr. Rachel up. Because actually, and seriously, I know we laugh at it, but if you are one of those men and you are concerned about that, seriously, go to our YouTube channel or our app. The conversation we had with Dr. Rachel, she's a sexologist. She actually helps in her institute a lot of men who have experienced, she does not call it erectile dysfunction. She actually is helping a lot of men restore their sex life after they've actually had prostate cancer. And so y'all want to go check that out. Teresa London, your question.
Well, thank you so much for writing this piece. I feel like we at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania have always been talking about women's health. And so now having this bill, I'm hoping it mirrors over here with the Commonwealth. So I don't necessarily have a question, but more so congratulations, for one, bringing it to our attention. And secondly, I'm willing to share. So I hope everybody else takes it to their statewide elected official, and hopefully you can get this bill across the finish line.
Absolutely. Let's not stop here.
Actually, I'm going to do this here. I am going to ask a question for Teresa based off her statement. Roy, that point is important because what we often have seen, we have seen laws, local laws, county, state, that are related to women and their health, and you don't see the same. So even when you talk about elected officials, you do not see the same focus when it comes to the health of men. Not being as proactive.
Absolutely. But one thing about this bill is there are so many men, even in the state legislature, who came up to me, again, from both sides of the aisle and said, thank you for bringing this to me. I had Republican lawmakers and lobbyists who said, my uncle is suffering from prostate cancer. My grandfather died of prostate cancer. It is a unifying ailment. It is a condition that affects everyone. And I would like nothing better than to bring this effort to other states. There are a few states that have this bill, and what was important about it is that it had the support of the insurance companies here. And it's great that the insurance companies said, look, we'd rather pay for this screening up front than to have to pay for a more aggressive and more expensive treatment later on. So the fact that the insurance companies were supportive, that it is a condition that crosses all lines, is something that I think is a message we can take to other states and try to get similar laws passed there too.
Rebecca?
Thank you for being on the show tonight. How do we talk to the Black men in our life about getting these much needed screenings, and not just even more prostate, but even colon cancer and some of the other screenings?
It's a great question. I look them in the eye and ask them about love. Ask them who they love, what they love, who is depending on them. We take our role as providers very seriously, and whether we have children, grandchildren, spouses, or family members, we know that we have been called to be here for a reason. And then we're also called to do everything we can in order to take care of this temple, to ensure that we are here and able to become all that God has called us to be. So I just tell my brothers, I said, look, you want to take care of your children, whether you have them now or children in the future. You want to be able to be here to run with your grandchildren. My children are now 31 and 28, but I still want to see them get married. I want to see grandchildren. So if it's about getting this test, if that's the one thing that's going to help me, give me this one opportunity in this one area where I have a very high chance of getting it, especially if I had my father had it. If you have a direct relative with prostate cancer, you might as well just sign up for it now. That's how prevalent this is. But I just look Black men in the eye and say, why are you here? You're not here to leave us before your time. This is a very curable ailment, but curability is totally based on catching it early.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, again, congratulations on this bill. Go to my iPad again. I'm telling y'all, if what Roy said, and Dr. Rachel talked about that as well in our interview. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you can pull it up. It says that Dr. Rachel Ross explains all you need to know how to heal your, she calls it E-function. She doesn't call it erectile dysfunction, but that issue, look, men talk about that, and so there are answers to that. And so, folks, please get checked out, all right? It's critically important. And, Roy, when you made the point about, being a provider, it's real simple. You actually make it more difficult on your family when we have men checking out early because they're not here. And there's nothing worse than when you have something that is this curable, and then you see us dying at a higher rate than white men because we find out too late.
As you mentioned, it is so treatable, it is very curable, and there are so many organizations and support groups that are there to help us. Since I've been diagnosed, I've gotten involved with the Mike Slive Prostate Cancer Foundation, which was named after the former SEC commissioner who died of prostate cancer. Also involved with Now Included, a organization, an online health community that allows people to come together and talk about their health concerns. And I've long been a member of the American Cancer Society board here in Alabama. And those groups have been so supportive of my journey and are helping me to get this word out and to just encourage more men to do what they can do to be here for their families. When I first was diagnosed, had my first meeting with my urologist, he said to me, don't start getting your affairs in order just yet or saying your goodbyes. Prostate cancer is 97% curable, but you have to do the things that are instructed and follow through in order for you to be on that 97% side. And those are great odds, Roland. I'll take those odds to Vegas. So if you want to tell black men, look, you have a 97% chance of surviving this, but only through early detection.
All right. Roy, I appreciate it. Now go to the driving range, get that swing in order so I can come
Absolutely.
on, so I can come on down there.
I'll work on mine, and I'll see you soon.
So I can go down there and take some of that AL.com money.
You got it.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. All right, y'all. We are going to go to a break. We'll be back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Again, support the work that we do. Join our Brain and Funk fan club. You want to contribute via Cash App. Use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. Also, you, of course, use it for checks. Use it for credit cards as well. Checks and money ordered. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
Virginia, we are counting on you. Republicans want to steal enough seats in Congress to rig the next election and wield unchecked power for 2 more years. But you can stop them by voting yes by April 21st. Help put our elections back on a level playing field and let voters decide, not politicians. This is the responsible thing to do. Help us chart a better path forward, Virginia. Vote yes by April 21st.
I'm Mark Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League, and I'm watching the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, time for Black Star Network headlines with Brittany Noble.
2 black Texas state troopers will get over $1.6 million after a federal jury found they experienced racial harassment and retaliation within the Department of Public Safety. Gerald Sams and Sergeant Jerry McPherson filed the case in 2020, claiming they had endured years of discrimination from their supervisors. After a 3-week trial, the jury ruled that both men were harassed due to their race and determined that the agency failed to take appropriate action. The department denies these claims and is currently seeking a mistrial. In Maryland, 4 Baltimore City police officers are facing criminal charges tied to separate allegations of assault. Investigators say they abused the power of their badges and attempted to cover it all up, which the state's attorney now exposed. Officers Kevin Dugan, Kevin Hilton, also Mordecai Mandelbaum and Menachem Rosenblum are all accused of making false statements, false reports, misconduct, and in Rosenblum's case, second-degree assault. The allegations spanned multiple encounters dating back to June 8, 2024. Investigators say Dugan used a leg sweep to take down a juvenile who had been not made physical contact with him, then pressed a wooden baton against the teen's throat while he was on the ground. Officer Hilton is accused of shoving a man down a step after the man was trying to break up a fight. Officer Mandelbaum falsely accused the suspect of tripping, then kicking him during a foot pursuit. And Officer Rosenblum is accused of spraying a man multiple times in the face with pepper spray after he surrendered to police. State Attorney Ivan Bates says he is committed to holding these officers accountable. Well, Sean Diddy Combs' release date has been moved once again. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the hip-hop mogul's new release date is now set for April 15th, 2028, which shortens his sentence by 10 days. Combs is currently serving a 50-month federal prison sentence after being convicted on 2 counts related to transportation of the purpose of engaging in prostitution. He was acquitted of more serious charges, including sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy, after a high-profile trial in New York. Oral arguments for his appeal are scheduled for Thursday, April 9th. A federal judge has permanently blocked President Donald Trump's executive order aimed at defunding NPR and PBS. In his ruling, Judge Randolph Moss determined that the directive violated First Amendment rights. He found that the action unconstitutionally targeted specific media outlets based on their editorial content, describing it as textbook unlawful. Trump's order sought to cut federal funding to these agencies due to political disagreements over their coverage. While NPR and PBS celebrated the ruling as a victory for a free press, the White House called it a ridiculous ruling and argued that these organizations should not get taxpayer funds. The Trump administration plans to appeal this decision. Well, people in Palm Beach, Florida may get a new airport in name only. On Monday, Governor Ron DeSantis signed legislation clearing the way for the renaming of Palm Beach International Airport after President Donald Trump. If finalized, the change could take effect as early as July 1st. With the airport's code shifting from PBI to DJT, the move comes as Trump also unveils plans for a presidential library in Miami, adding to a growing list of landmarks all tied to his name. Approval by the Federal Aviation Administration is still needed to seal the deal. Well, there will be no punishment or investigation after 2 Army military helicopters flew over Kid Rock's house over the weekend. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth reversed the Army's suspension. The aircraft, identified as AH-64, was operating in the Nashville area when it flew over the rapper's house. On Saturday, Kid Rock posted a video on X showing him standing in the backyard of his Tennessee home as a military helicopter hovered for several seconds and another flew by. Before the decision came down from Hegseth, the personnel involved has been suspended in flight duties while the Army is reviewing this situation.
All right, folks. Georgia State Representative Tanya Miller, of course, we had on the show last night. She's running for Attorney General. Was talking about her, well, first of all, we would discuss with her campaign, but there was a discussion on the floor of the General Assembly, and it dealt with the issue of Confederate monuments. And you have these Republicans who are just insistent on these things. And so Miller had to let them know and say, you know what, I think y'all deserving of a history lesson.
I wanted to speak briefly as a great-granddaughter of the South. Anybody else here a great-granddaughter, grandson of the South? Great. Our blood is in the soil. So let me say this, and I want to be really clear, as we are dismissive, and I am actually flabbergasted at the celebrated ignorance of your own history with the level of dismissal and disdain. It is shocking, and we should all be embarrassed for every person in this body that considers themselves a statesman or a stateswoman or a student of history. Let me tell you something. If you have read American history and you have read the Bible, you would understand that there is no history of slavery like American slavery. American slavery is what we call chattel slavery. Chattel slavery, to anybody who might be wondering, did not exist in the Bible, because you know what slaves in the Bible were? People, human beings, indentured servants, forced laborers. They were not, in essence, property to be murdered, raped, sold, stolen, and declared in the Constitution 3/5 of a human being. So let me be really clear. The Civil War was fought over slavery. The people who we are memorializing in these Confederate monuments went to war with their own countrymen over slavery, over the right to own another person, to force women to have babies and breed, to buck break black men. We will not in this moment, and I know we're getting close to the end and we get a little squirrely, but what we will not do is skate past the history of my ancestors, my history in this country, a people stolen from across the ocean, many of whom chose the sea rather than to become property of the folks that you seek to defend and memorialize and create litigation avenues to. It is a sad, sad day in this chamber. These remarks were inexcusable. We should all be saddened and ashamed of ourselves as we continue to try to limit teaching history. Why? Because we want to get away with rewriting it. We're not talking about a war. We're talking about centuries of mass murder. That is my granddaughter's story of the South. And let me say this, because I'm going to pivot real quick because I only have a minute. The notion that we have not even considered the constitutionality of making standing so flimsy that anybody could wake up in the morning and decide they want to sue. That's not how the Constitution works. If you're a lawyer in this chamber, you know that is not how standing works. You have to have an injury in fact, not one in your imagination, not a preference. An injury, a constitutional one, concrete, that allows you to invoke the authority of the judicial branch. This is an awful sad day. We could have done a lot of things. We could have required that these monuments be placed where they belong, and that is in a museum to be studied like every other civilized country does. But we are still waging wars with the ghosts of a past and a war that was lost. Lost for the purpose of treating men and women and babies as human beings. And you will not, in my face, in the faces of my brothers and sisters and countrymen and children of the South, pretend like what happened down here was biblical and of God. It is a disgrace. I'm going to ask my colleagues to reflect deeply on what just happened from this well today, just feet away from me. I'm glad my grandmother is not alive in 2026 to hear what came from this well moments ago. Now, y'all are gonna pass this bill because you're gonna do what you do, but let me tell you something else. We'll see you in court. Mr. Speaker, I yield.
Just so y'all know, this was a state senator in Georgia. Listen to how stupid he sounded.
I heard an amendment that was put up. We ought to call this the protection of slavery. Folks, let me tell you, slavery exists today, and we need to be more concerned about the slavery that exists today than the slavery that existed 160, 70 years ago. You know, this very House objected to a real ID bill for neoanestheticists a few weeks ago, but yet we know that probably one of the biggest areas of indentured servitude comes from one of the Asian countries, that they bring whole families over here and work them in the nail tech business until they've paid off their transport fees or whatever it may be. So let me assure you that slavery still exists. So I'm more concerned with that than I am past history. But I know that we have a lot to deal with. We have a lot to deal with across the boundaries. I heard an amendment that was put up, we ought to call.
Crazy, deranged Republicans today. And then, of course, then you got these, Teresa, you got these Simple Simon Negroes who love to talk about Democrats start the KKK. And it was the Republicans who, the most fierce defenders of the Confederacy today are Republicans, especially in the South. And what also just trips me out, Teresa, about these people, these Republicans, they love using plantation language, too. I mean, their affinity for slavery is astounding.
Yeah, we have to really think about the why. And most times when I'm hearing about the downplaying of slavery, Black history, Black excellence in its totality, it's usually from those who do not want the next generation to understand how powerful we are as a being. And you can tell that because the next thing they say posted is about what we've done for you and how, you know, because you're in this position, better happens. But it's really, for me, it's about them lacking accountability for what happened in the past so we can change the future and not repeat it. And we can see in multiple instances from those who are elected, those who have millions of dollars sitting on their own plantation that probably Black folks was on, but now we would call it estates. Those individuals are having these conversations in back rooms like, okay, they're, you know, Black folks are really good at serving us, they're good at entertaining us, but they can't be on the same level as us. So how do we make sure that we don't talk to them about their history, about what they've done, so they can be better? And I think as we continue to have these dialogues, continue to see the examples of what this administration has been doing to try in the last 4 years to really erase what Black history it means from individual and from the economic standpoint, we're here. So it really takes us, it takes, you know, our platforms, it takes individuals who know our history, who are keeping these books in our libraries to really tell the story over and over.
Absolutely. And again, you could trust they're going to keep this nonsense up because they have to protect whiteness, Rebecca.
Roland, there's a reason that almost 25% of my DNA is European ancestry. It wasn't because of a great American love story. It was because of rape. Right? And so that's the story of a lot of us in this country. And so for someone to be extremely dismissive and say, oh, that's something that happened 160 years ago, then why are we still feeling the impacts of what happened 160 years ago? But that's also someone who's attempting to disassociate. Because if you have to confront that history, then you also have to confront the justice that we need because of that history. You have to confront what this country owes us because of that history. So, okay, cool. He could say what he wants to say. He could do what he wants to do. But also that's the state that literally has carved KKK members and Confederate members into the side of what, Stone Mountain? So it's like, come on.
Michael.
It's so disturbingly disappointing to now watch the GOP not just accept and have white supremacy at the top of their political to-do list. But now, folks, it's almost like who can be the most racist? That's the race. The race is, wow, okay, Donald Trump says racist things. He's, at the top of the list. Well, DeSantis has done some crazy racist things by pulling history about black folks out of schools. So it's so interesting to see that, disappointing to see it. And no one in that party stands up and says, well, what they say is, oh, well, First Amendment rights, they have a right to say what they want and believe what they, of course, no one's saying you can't, but that doesn't mean you have to be right. You can be wrong too. And so it's just disappointing of where the Republican Party has become white supremacy, racist party. And of course, not all. I'm sure there are many that don't think that way, but there are a lot that do. And they're all in leadership. And that's the disappointing part.
Absolutely. All right, folks. About an hour ago, a little more than an hour ago, NASA launched Artemis 2. They're going to be actually circling the moon, and this was some of the video that they streamed when they were talking about the crew. And so check this out.
Make excursions and fail every now and then and regroup and carry on. I think all those things come together in the end to get you where you are. I've had to overcome, I'm a human being. I've had to overcome a lot of fears. I'm pretty scared of heights. I joked about that on the International Space Station, but it turns out I'm only scared like at the edge of a building. When you're up on the International Space Station, even though you're 250 miles up, I never had that feeling of falling or that I was, at risk up there. I just kind of loved the feeling of floating and looking down at Earth. There have been challenges all throughout my life. By far, the biggest challenge was losing my wife in 2020 to cancer and now raising two daughters who are grown up now, but that's been the biggest challenge by far I've ever had to face. It is not easy. Being an only parent, trying to work a full-time job, and raising two kids is something that I think about every single day. I'm very proud of the work I've done. I haven't always done it well, but I've always shown up and tried as hard as I possibly can.
And now Artemis 2 pilot Victor Glover and his journey to this history-making moment.
I do wonder what it's going to be like when we are really far from Earth and can see it. The sensation of being so far away from everything that you know. I had that sensation on the space station the first time I got to sit in the cupola for a really long time. So I can only imagine what that's going to be like from 200,000 plus miles away. My name is Victor Glover, and I'm the pilot for NASA's Artemis 2 mission around the moon. When I was in 4th grade, I was 10 years old, and that's when the Challenger accident happened. And it helped me understand how the general public felt about the astronaut corps, right? Like, these are the people that we want to be, and that just gave me an easy thing to strive toward. The biggest fear that I've had to overcome in my life is doubting myself. Going to college when no one in my family had gone to college was a huge risk. I had more confidence in my athletic ability than in my academic abilities. I could play football with those college students that I saw on TV, but my classmates that I saw in the lab and around the University Union, I didn't know if I had what they had. I think addressing that self-doubt was a part of, swinging for the fence and trying to go get an engineering degree, not just go to college, but get an engineering degree and then go do something challenging and technical like flying. Apollo is known for sending humans to the moon. Artemis has an opportunity to continue the Apollo story, but I actually think it's important for this story to stand on its own. Artemis is a new program, and we're trying to do new things. And it's great to compare and contrast. When you look at our spaceship, you can see parts that were designed, built, and integrated in another country. When you look at our crew, you see that our crew is international. There are also men and women. And I just think that comparing and contrasting makes the story even richer. The piloting role specifically, I will have an hour and a half or so where I get to fly the spacecraft by hand. We haven't flown that many spaceships. And so the ability to fly one actually in space on a test mission is just a really unique opportunity. I can't tell you how I'm going to feel when we fly by the moon and see the moon up close and the Earth from 250,000 miles away, but I don't use the word excited because I'm focused. You know, what we do, this is very serious and it's very risky, and we are all intimately familiar with that risk. And so if we go out there and we're successful and we can pass that baton on to Artemis 3, that's something to really be excited about.
All right, folks, and this was Blast Off.
And we're also hearing that the last hatch closure, as you can see in the bottom corner of your screen, they're starting to work on that. That's the launch abort system hatch. There are two hatches, the crew hatch and the launch abort system hatch, and the closeout crew that you see right there, right on time with their work as they go to shut. And you can see it in motion right now, that launch abort system hatch. That's the latest from the firing room. We'll send it back to the host desk.
Thank you so much, Daryl. Great news.
10, 9, 8, 7. RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Good roll pitch.
Roger, roll pitch.
Houston now controlling the flight of integrity on the Artemis 2 mission around the moon.
Integrity, AMT high.
AMT high.
On time, passing 30 seconds into the flights. Integrity passes the alternate MECO. Target milestone. Mission Control Houston seeing good performance on the 4 main engines. Space Launch System core stage. Integrity, 3 miles in altitude. Traveling more than 1,200 miles per hour.
And Anthony, on my iPad, this is a live look of the Artemis 2 in space. This is the NASA YouTube channel. Live look right there. You know what? I guess what's somewhat sad. You know, Michael, I'll start with you. There was a time, I mean, if you look at the 1960s and then you look at the space shuttle launches in the 1980s, I mean, there was a time where that was like major interest when it came to the space program. I mean, it was covered, it was hyped, it was talked about, it was and it was looked forward to. Then it reached a point where even the space shuttle program where it was kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like it was just a regular plane taking off, and I think that and then when you talk about rekindling that, one of the people, and she doesn't get credit for this, but one of the people who really was engaged in making a lot of this possible, what we're seeing right here, was Vice President Kamala Harris. She was a huge supporter of space, often talked about it. This is just something I think that, I would hope that we would get back to this interest in space here more broadly in the United States. Michael?
Yeah, you're right, Roland. I don't remember the years when those kind of conspiracy theories started to come out that the moon landing was fake and all those kind of things. I've certainly heard about them, but I didn't believe them. I believed it was real, maybe certainly being naive, but it's important, and especially for young kids of color can be a rocket scientist, and there are some already and have been ever back since the Hidden Figures days. So from our standpoint, it's fine. I think it's good. It's important. STEM is obviously part of that, and hopefully more young people of color will find an interest in it and participate.
These were photos here, Rebecca, Vice President Kamala Harris, when she spent time with the members of the crew And this was a photo they took there as well. And again, I remember a time when this country was just sort of enraptured with the idea of space.
Roland, it opens up the imagination. It calls us to ideate. It calls us to be hopeful for the future. Right now, we're so mired in the craziness of this administration, but it's good to be able to have hope. It's good to let your mind fill with fancy and think about what's possible instead of just thinking about the constant fight that we're in. I do want to point out in the chat, Roland, they want you to acknowledge that the pilot is a Sigma.
They need something. I knew that, but okay, and all right, they need something. So okay, I'm gonna give y'all. I'm gonna give y'all one thing. Teresa.
Yeah, I totally agree with my other panelists. NASA and going to space, and that was a whole thing. And so now it's not. It's very interesting in itself, but we just need to make sure the Congress and the Senate is still funding these explorations, because research is necessary for us to know what's going on and come back with the research so we can inform and educate this generation and beyond.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Let me thank Teresa. Let me thank Michael. Let me thank Rebecca for being on today's panel. I really appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Folks, on Saturday, I was emceeing the Friendship Public Charter School Annual Teacher of the Year Gala, and it was fantastic to do so. I love the program. I love how they had this great gala, this wonderful event. Black people get all dressed up, black tie event to honor their Teacher of the Year. And this is when they named the winner.
Okay. I would first like to say that God has been amazing, okay? I thank him for my journey, my purpose, and for sure my passion in being a teacher, okay? I have a speech, of course. Hold on.
Naja Brown, she was one of the, a math teacher, if I'm correct, and she got honored as the Teacher of the Year. It was pretty cool. Now, all their finalists get $5,000. $5,000 tax-free. The winner gets $15,000. Friendship Public Charter School is one of the shining examples. It is founded by Donald L. Hentz, good brother. And see, Scott Bolden. And see, look, I'll mention he's a Kappa, shockingly. So yeah, I always wear black and gold just to mess with Donald every year when I emceeing. But he founded Friendship Public Charter School 29 years ago, and it is the preeminent charter program here in the nation's capital. Pat Brantley is their CEO. And if you want to understand how serious they are about education, listen to these accomplishments when she gave her annual speech.
It is wonderful to see you here tonight and to see you all dressed to the nines. Now, to the nines, for those of you who need a definition, it means showing up at your absolute best, polished, confident, and fully present. And looking around this room today, I'd say that checks out. Although we all know this is not exactly how most of you look at 8:05 a.m. on a Monday. When one student needs a pencil, Another needs the restroom. Someone cannot log into their Chromebook, and the copier has simply chosen chaos. But tonight, nails done, hair done, everything did. Friendship, you fancy, huh? So Monday morning, we will be right back at it. But tonight is your night. Tonight, you are dressed to the nines. That phrase has been on my mind for another reason. This year, friendship is 29 years old. Now, anyone who has ever approached a milestone birthday knows that moment, that pause just before the celebration when you ask yourself, how am I doing? Am I ready for what comes next? Friendship, how are we doing? Are we ready for what comes next? Well, a few years ago, Friendship began talking about something we call our journey to 30. And we were clear about one thing. When Friendship reaches that milestone, we don't want it to simply be about longevity. We want it to be about undeniable excellence, about showing the very best of our work, the very best of our outcomes, and the very best of our impact on our home city, this city of Washington, D.C. At 30, we want to be to the nines. So how are we doing standing here at 29? Well, I'll tell you. At 29, Friendship is standing on business. Over the last 3 years, and Donald stole a little of my thunder, but I'll still say it. Over the last 3 years, the #1 or #2 middle school in Washington, D.C. has been right here at Friendship. Yeah, blow. That's right. When the Charter Board shared Aspire performance levels, roughly 20 charter schools across the country, across the city, earned a level 1 recognition, the very highest level of academic performance for charters. Friendship was among them. And when you look at the K-8 framework of Aspire, nearly half, over 43% of the highest performing elementary and middle charter schools in this city are Friendship schools. Now, where does that lead our scholars? To Princeton? To Morehouse? A list of colleges too long to recite. And those numbers matter. I want you to hear them and be proud. But I need to say something clearly before we go any further. The numbers are not the stars. They are simply the shadow the stars cast. And the stars are in this room. Before I tell you more about them, I want to acknowledge the people whose belief in this work makes it possible. We are guided by the finest board of trustees anywhere, led by a man who has never stopped believing in what friendship can be, Chairman Donald L. Hentz. I also want to welcome the public leaders and partners who have joined us tonight, members of D.C. Council, and our special friend, Chairman Phil Mendelson. Thank you for joining us in every year that you can. It means something that you stand with us for education, and it is much appreciated. We have with us D.C. State Board of Education. We have President Dr. Jock Patterson. We are also joined by others on the State Board, and I want to thank my very dear friend, Dr. LaJoy Johnson. I believe Ebony Rose Thompson and T. Michelle Colson are also in this room. From my board, I won't say the best ward, but Ward 7, we are out tonight. From the DC Alliance of Public Charter Schools, our Executive Director, Ariel Johnson. Thank you for being here. Jess Giles from Ed Reform Now, Josh Boots from Empower K-12. I can't name all the partners, so I won't. But just know we appreciate all that you do in this city for our children. A special shout out, though, because it's parents who choose us. And to PAVE, thank you for being here. Parents amplifying voices in education, because like I always say to people, you know who votes? Parents, educators, and soon our children. And a special note to anyone who hopes to govern Washington, D.C., because I know some of you in this room are on the campaign trail. What you see in this room is not a photo opportunity. Though you look good, and we are proud to stand by you for a photo. But it's not a photo opportunity, it's a civics lesson. The future of this city is not being written in anyone's campaign office. It is being written right now, every day, inside our classrooms. And anyone who truly understands that will have our full attention. Now let me tell you what To the Nines actually looks like. It doesn't look like a tuxedo at 8:05 in the morning. It looks like this. A few weeks ago, I walked into one of our classrooms unannounced, the way I like to do. No agenda, no prepared remarks, just me and whatever was happening. What was happening was this. A student was stuck. You could see it before the teacher even said a word. That look, the one every educator in this room knows when the work feels just a little slightly out of reach and confidence begins to slip. I watched to see what would happen next. That teacher didn't rush past it. They didn't move the class forward. Instead, that teacher, she pulled up a chair. She leaned in and worked through it. Piece by piece, not giving the answer, just holding the door open until the student could walk through it herself. And then the student looked up and said, "I get it now." 4 words, fairly simple. But every teacher in this room knows what those 4 words and what that moment meant. That moment meant, I see you. I believe in you. You are capable of more than you think. That moment multiplied by thousands happening every day across 15 Friendship campuses in 5 wards is what built this organization. Not buildings alone, though we need every facility dollar our children are owed to make sure our buildings are safe and ready for teaching and learning. Not policies and frameworks alone, though we appreciate transparent policies and frameworks that let us do the work without bogging us down. Not leadership alone, though we are grateful for our leaders whose long tenure is the key to our stability. And not test scores alone, though we celebrate each and every point gained on the road to proficiency. None of those things alone. What built this organization? Teachers. For nearly 30 years, Friendship has worked to define what excellent public education can look like in Washington, D.C. But that work has never been abstract. It has been built lesson by lesson, day by day, by educators like the ones we celebrate tonight. Teachers, you are not a supporting character in this story. You are the story. And tonight, we say your names. We ask you to stand. We ask everyone in this room to show the full depth of their appreciation, because our teachers of the year tonight have earned every decimal. And first, Friendship Armstrong, Shelley and Barrett. And next, Friendship Flo Pierce, Nija Brown. Friendship Chamberlain, Kayla Vines. Friendship Collegiate Academy, Donna Lewis Johnson. Friendship Ideal, Zanita Hilliard. Friendship Online, Anna Morton. Friendship Southeast, Therese Person. Mr. Person. Friendship Technology Preparatory Academy, Coy McKinney. And Friendship Woodridge International, Julian Williams. These are the educators whose classrooms are the proof. And standing here at 29, 1 year from our milestone, I want to say something to every teacher in this room. The next chapter of friendship is unwritten. And I've thought a lot about what I want it to mean when we turn 30. Here's what I've landed on. I want it to mean we never stop believing in the students other people would give up on. That we never let data become a ceiling. That we never confuse results with the people who produce them. Because To the Nines was never about what we wear to galas. It's what happens on a Monday morning when a student is struggling and a teacher pulls up a chair and doesn't move until that child looks up and says, "I get it now." That is Friendship To the Nines. And when this organization turns 30, when we look back at what these years were made of, the proof will not be in our rankings or our report cards, though I assure you they will show it. The proof will be in the hearts we touched. It will be in every student who carries a teacher's belief in them long after the lesson has ended. It will be in what the song says is the only legacy that matters. I was here, I lived, I loved, I made a difference, and this world will see. Friendship, you were here. You are here. These teachers, they were here. And because of them, the very best of this city is still ahead of us. Thank you. And congratulations to our extraordinary Teachers of the Year.
Sorry, I was talking to our control room earlier. All right, y'all, this was the video that was produced about the winner, Nija Brown.
Congratulations to all of our finalists. It is now my honor to announce the 2026 W. Edward Walter Excellence in Teaching Award. This is a very heavy envelope.
The wrong video. I want you to play the video that I just queued up of her in the classroom. Nope, that ain't it. All right, I had it queued up. All right, give me 1 second. So what they did was, folks, they actually did they produced videos on each one of the finalists, and they for each person. And so what they did when they introduced each person, then they actually showed the video, and you had the students and parents talking about them in the classroom. And so I wanted to play her video because it was pretty cool to listen to her students talk about her and what she does. And let me see here. If 1 second. All right, here we go. Give me 1 second. Here's her principal introducing her, and then they're gonna play the video. Go.
powerful and contagious. She doesn't just teach, she inspires. As a cheerleading coach, she models confidence, discipline, and teamwork, qualities that show up not only on the mat, but in the classroom and in the lives of her scholars. Former students come back to see her. Current students advocate for the opportunity to be in her class. This speaks volumes to the relationship she builds and the trust she earns. Step into her classroom and you'll discover a space where scholars feel valued, respected, and have high expectations that go hand in hand with the outcomes that Ms. Brown has for them. A place where every child is seen as capable, brilliant, and deserving of success. Naja Brown is more than an exceptional teacher. She is a force within our community. Her impact transforms students, uplifts families, and strengthens our entire school community.
I'm an extraordinary educator because we always tell our kids to reach for the sky, and I want my students to literally be the sky.
Good morning, Mookies. Good morning.
I'm driven by the responsibility to shape lives beyond the classroom. It is a privilege to recognize students' potential and build confidence, character, and belief within every student.
She has a unique way of connecting with her scholars and finding what it is for each individual scholar that gets them to click.
I love music, so I let my students know that anything can be a song.
Anything for real. One more time.
She's funny, nice, smart. She helped us. She's caring.
I have never seen somebody so dedicated and give their time and their love and their heart and their all to their students.
What do you think that means?
Reading opens up the world in so many ways. And I love that every story you can connect to a different child.
Whenever you're in her classroom, students speak up, they collaborate, they have rich discussion.
I always put their voices first. Good job. I love that answer. When they know that they are heard, seen, valued, and loved, they start showing up for you academically in ways that we know are possible.
She really cares about my feelings. And when we need help with the questions, she's helped us top it out.
I believe y'all can do it. Y'all believe y'all can do it?
She gives them what they need. If it's a student who needs a mother figure, she steps in and plays that role. And for some of our scholars, especially on the sideline at the cheerleading events, you could see her cheering alongside the girls.
Being a cheerleading coach has been so impactful. It's about discipline, commitment, respect, and honesty, and builds sisterhood to know that they always have somebody else that's looking out for them.
She's just everything. She's the best teacher ever.
Yeah, great job, great job. Block it!
All right. All right, y'all. That was Naja Brown, the Teacher of the Year for Friendship Public Charter School. And listen, I mean, I tell y'all all the time. I'm a supporter of charter schools that we control, that we, like I say, get to run, and they do an absolute great job at Friendship Public Charter School. Donald Hintz, of course, I said founder, phenomenal job. And so it was great. And so somebody in the chat said, I'm going to make a donation to Friendship Public Charter School. And well, they were letting folks know that how all of that is possible. We were moderating the whole event. And so what I did was I took this photo here. And this was the QR code here. And so again, this is a black controlled public charter school, y'all, and they are doing an excellent job educating our children, turning out some unbelievable students. And so if you want to support, so they had these on the table, and so this is the QR code right here. If you want to support Friendship Public Charter School, here in the nation's capital. That is the QR code right there. We make it a lot easier for y'all to donate. And so if y'all are watching, and like I say, I see y'all don't realize I read the comments. And somebody did that. Somebody said that they want to make a donation. And so again, here you go. And so like I say, I've done this. Oh man, again, if you take out the 2 COVID years, I've done this. I think it's now 9 or 10 years. I've emceed the Teacher of the Year Gala, and it's always fantastic. And it is one of the few. Like, listen, I've done stuff all across the country. I told y'all the event that I emceed. I've emceed it twice in Cincinnati. Yes, in Cincinnati, where they acknowledge people in STEM, and then this is one of the great programs. And so, I mean, think about it, y'all. We go to these award shows. We have these red carpets, and we go to the Image Awards, and we go to the SAG and the Grammys, and all of these different things here. But it's awesome to have an annual gala where they get to actually recognize their teachers. It's always great to see them dressed up, everybody, the after party as well. And so that was loads of fun. And so it's always great. And it was, like I say, it was pretty cool. And so to see folks celebrate these students, to see them celebrate the educators, is great, and it's just always a good time. And so I just always appreciate them having me back. We live stream it every year as well, and so it's pretty cool. So people all around the country now get to see their Teacher of the Year and a great job that she has done. All right, folks, that is it for us. Actually, so after I do our announcement, I'm going to close out because Serious Company, the go-go band, they actually were performing in the after party, so we're going to close the show out with them. But before I play that, we want y'all to, of course, support the work that we do by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. The dollars that you give to support this show allow us to do things like this. And listen, there's no, first of all, let's be clear, no other national show is going to show you a Teacher of the Year. It's going to show you anything along those lines. And so that's what we did there. And the work that we do is not going to happen as well. So the stories that we cover, I think is so critically important. So we want y'all to stand with us. And so do me a favor. You want to contribute via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. That's also for credit cards, checks and money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal's R. Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Samsung Smart TV. Be sure to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered swag at shopblackstarnetwork.com. Hats and T-shirts, all that good stuff. And if y'all get your swag, take a photo, email it to us, post it on social media, and then I will show it on the show. Also, of course, if you want to support our Black-owned companies, all the products that you see right here are in our marketplace, our shop, blackstarnetwork.com marketplace. I mean, we got some fantastic Black-owned companies, and so please support them as well. Peruse the marketplace at shopblackstarnetwork.com. Download the app Fanbase. Follow me at Roland S. Martin, and so support that Black-owned app as well. Don't forget to watch every day at noon Eastern, The Breakdown with Brittany Noble right here on the Black Star Network. And so check us out there as well. And yo, I appreciate it, y'all. Thank you so very much. A great April Fool's Day, April 1st. And I'll see y'all tomorrow right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's close this thing out. This is Serious Company out of D.C. They did the after party for the Friends of Public Charter School on Saturday. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Holla!